Raine again from Initiative Tabletop, and today I've got something I'm really excited to talk to you about. Not too long ago, a sci-fi space RPG launched on Kickstarter called Fragged Empire, and what I've got here is a beta copy of the rulebook that you'll get if you fund the campaign. Fragged Empire is everything I've been looking for in a sci-fi RPG. It's got an amazing backstory, it's got great mechanics, and it's just phenomenal. The story of Fragged Empire is a unique one. Basically, humanity has died out due to genetic erosion, and in order to continue their legacy, they bioengineered a new race called the Archons. The Archons set out to space, trying to further their own industry, and they decided that they wanted to create the perfect race in order to follow in humanity's footsteps. After many races have been created, they came across one that they called the Zion. They called the Zion the perfect race. After observing them for a while, they realized how flawed the Zion were. They decided to strip the Zion of their perfect title, and this did not make them happy. The Zion rebelled and fought the Archon in a long war. The Archons worked really hard to fight back, and they destroyed all but one of the Zion. This Zion disappeared for many, many years. And then out of the blue, or out of the black, since we're talking about space, the Zion returned with an army of his own. And this army was perfect for combat. Using this new army of, yet again, another bioengineered race, the Zion wiped out all of the Archons. Satisfied with his victory, he disappeared into space. Now, 100 years later, of all the races that the Archon created, 4 remain. Now you play as one of these 4 races who have just re-entered space, and now you're trying to figure out how to have peace amongst you. Fragged Empire works just like any other RPG you've heard of. You're going to have skill rolls, you're going to have adventures, you're going to have skills, and you're going to have combat, but what makes Fragged Empire so great is the new system. Fragged Empire works off of a 3d6 system. So instead of rolling a d20 and adding a skill to see if something happens, whenever you need to, you roll a 3d6 and then add your skill, and depend on if you have any traits or tools that will help you. In Fragged Empire, you can play one of 4 different races. You can play as the Corporation, which is basically a group of seedy people who are out for monetary gain. Or you can choose to play the Kaltorans, a race of cat-like humanoids who suffer from having the memories of their ancestors from when they fought the war passed down through genetics. A personal favorite of mine is the Legion. These are a group of ape-like humanoids who specialize in heavy armor, are really good at security, and make a great frontliner. And finally, you can play a Nephilim. Remember when I said the Zion left and then came back with an army of his own? The army that he came back with were the Nephilim. They have survived even though their creator has abandoned them. And so now the Nephilim have to survive along with these 3 other races who know they are responsible for wiping out everything they've ever known. Each race has their own traits. They have their own physical descriptions. They have their own home system, which is in the Fragged Empire world. They have a background on their culture. They give you some examples of names in Fragged Empire. And I feel like the book does a really good job describing, if you want to play a Nephilim, these are the things that you would like to do. If you want to play a Kaltoran, then you most likely this and this and this. So I really like how that helps you when you're deciding what race you want to play. Character creation is really simple. Your GM decides what level you start off at, then you select your race trait, you distribute 18 attribute points along your stats. So instead of like rolling 2d6 or 4d6 and dropping the lowest for every stat or using a point buy system, you have a total pool of points that you can distribute through all of your skills. I think that works very well for this system. You then get to select your trained skills, and then you get a trait per level, and what's really unique about this is your wealth and starting gear is all based off of resources. Now, you get influence points as well, depending on how you build your character, and there's something special called spare time. Whenever you have some moments to yourself, you can make spare time rolls to say, I want to go acquire a new weapon, I want to go make some money, I want to go do this, I want to go do that. So you'll spend spare time points to make these rolls to do this and acquire things. I think that's really cool because you can't just easily walk into a shop and get something. You have to have resources in order to do it, and it's great. Another thing that really makes me happy about Fragged Empire is the combat. Combat is resolved simply, yet has a lot of strategy. When you go into combat, you're going to roll 3d6 and add your weapon skill. Your weapons can have traits like splash damage, rockets, grenades, things like that will all affect combat. But what's so unique about combat in Fragged Empire is that you can take the combat from this RPG itself and make a miniature war game with it, a miniature skirmish game with it. Because in the combat in Fragged Empire, you have to rely on cover, tactics, strategy, teamwork. You really have to put your all into what you're doing in order to come out of a situation alive. And your characters can die. Whenever you deal damage to a character, you damage their, let's say their fatigue. They have a fatigue pool. Once that fatigue pool is empty, once you've done enough damage to them, you start damaging their traits. And then when their traits drop to a certain level, they flat out die. That same thing can happen to you, so you're not invincible. There are rules in Fragged Empire for you to be able to control spaceships, get your own spaceships, become a captain, go to distant worlds, and what's really awesome is that the book for Fragged Empire really lays everything out from a front cover to back cover perspective. As long as you read through it, you're going to understand everything you need, especially if you want to GM games, and that's where the fun comes in. Being able to set up games, tell your players that they're going to go on exotic missions, they need to go to distant planets and distant worlds, all while knowing that there are different races who have come together to try to find peace. It really makes for some great role playing. And the cool thing here is that the GM has a lot of resources at his disposal to reward players for great role playing, like spare time points, being able to award them bonuses in combat, give them extra equipment. It's really awesome. Fragged Empire is really everything that I'd like to see in a sci-fi RPG. The combat is really streamlined. It's a whole lot of fun. Even when you're not in combat, the way that you put your missions together and explain things to your PCs is just amazing, given the background and story that the book gives you. Now, I have here a beta copy, so there's some stuff missing. For instance, in the back, there's some weapons that need some stats, but looking at the Fragged Empire Kickstarter campaign, everything else has been polished. They're working on a lot of stuff like getting miniatures for the game. They're adding a second book that gives you all kinds of extra stuff for the game. And I think this is really worth checking out. Because if you've ever looked for a game to take you to space and really let you have freedom of creativity, but yet fighting what kind of seems like a Firefly-esque kind of setting, Fragged Empire will definitely do this for you. It's got a great storyline, the combat's really fun, character creation is simple, yet there's a lot of ways to make your characters really interesting and fun to play. And honestly, what it boils down to is Fragged Empire is fun to play. So, make sure you head to the Kickstarter page, check out some more about it, and thank you for watching this video. Until next time, happy gaming.